Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Xony, and today we're going to have some more stories from Reddit. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go. Now let's get into today's stories to find out what happened. My wife and I were married for 9 years. It was the longest and obviously most meaningful relationship by 40 ever had. My wife, 37, had 2 DUI in the first 3 years of our relationship. The second charge was a year after we were married. She knew how bad it was going to be if she got a third one, so she swore to me, just as seriously as the day she took her vows, that she would never drink and drive again. I believed her and she kept her promise for the next 8 years. Then she was faced with heartbreak when someone we were both very close to passed away. She saw this person every day and cared about them as much as she would her own child. We never felt ready to have children, but she filled that place in her life with other people she held dear. When this person was killed, it was big national news. She couldn't cope. She couldn't accept that this person was gone, and that another person would be so evil to take them before they got to live their life. I scheduled a group counseling session for us, but my wife was too upset to go. I held her and she cried. But after a week, life had to go on. I couldn't be excused from work anymore, even though my wife was able to take more time off, while at work the next day or shortly after that. I was texting my wife back and forth quickly until she stopped replying suddenly. I tried calling her after an hour and she didn't answer. Given my wife's instability at the time, I got permission to leave work early and went home. The sheriff's marked vehicle was parked outside, but it wasn't directly in front of our house, and I didn't think it was related to her because the sirens and engine were off. As I passed my wife's car in the driveway, I noticed a bag from the liquor store. My heart sank. She hadn't drank in a long time and didn't tell me anything about it. I entered the house quietly and heard noises in the bedroom. I snuck down the hallway and became certain I was hearing a man breathing heavily and our bed squeaking. I can only think that there was no way my wife was cheating on me. I was proved wrong when I came to the bedroom door that was slightly ajar. There was the sheriff still in uniform going at it with my wife. She didn't look too upset about it either. I silently recorded them as I shook and cried. I went back outside and called the police. I told them what was happening, and they dispatched other officers. When they arrived 5 minutes later, the sheriff was still inside my house and wife. I showed them the video and their jaws dropped. They tried to play it down, but I knew this guy was at least going to be fired. He was escorted out of my house in handcuffs. My wife came outside to find me and immediately started crying. I wouldn't let her touch me and told her I was filing for divorce. She told me she wouldn't have done this to me unless she felt like she didn't have a choice, and this was to avoid a third DUI. I told her it was her fault she bought the alcohol, drank it, and drove. If she would have been charged with the DUI, that's at least something we could work through together. But now I couldn't even look at her. I didn't want her to be my wife after knowing what she was willing to do behind my back. I hated her. I saw her face while it was happening, and she didn't look too inconvenienced. She was devastated to know I recorded her actions. With the police there, I was able to get help ordering her to pack some things and stay somewhere else for a while. She tried coming back a few times before our court hearing, but I wouldn't let her in and she didn't have house key. I had a winning case against her and the police station for malpractice. It only took a few months for our divorce to be made final, but it took 2 years for the police department to offer me a settlement. The sheriff was obviously fired, and it came to light that he was a married man before all this happened. This was pretty big news. There were several online articles circulating social media about it. After he was divorced, and for reasons unknown to me, he was able to move away with my ex to avoid scrutiny and hatred from the town and family members. From what I've heard, they left town together but split up pretty quickly. I knew they weren't meant to be together, and I don't think fate ever expected them to connect in this way. Their actions not only produced negative changes and consequences for themselves and the people they were closest to. My wife's mistake led to a bigger mistake. in an attempt to avoid repercussions from the first mistake. I believe she learned her lesson now because she texts me updates about her new, terribly unstable life. She wishes she would try to cope properly with me, instead of caving into the temptation of alcohol. I don't really know why she drove after drinking. I never asked because it didn't matter. She proved to me that she was willing to sacrifice the sanctity of our marriage in the hopes of saving herself from the trouble her actions would have brought. Now let's get into today's second story. My world came crashing down on the day that I decided to check my wife's purse. I can't pinpoint when she changed, only that it was gradual. She 40 became more and more antsy and anxious about everything, but specifically her independent but disabled adult brother. She started insisting that she go visit him more and more often to make sure he was okay. She swore to me that his health seemed to be declining, and I, 36, took her word for it. We were married for 12 years when this started happening. I knew my wife is an energetic and fun woman. She always wanted to have a good time with me, even if it was at home. Even as she aged, she never really slowed down and always maintained her go-getter attitude. We had 2 children together, aged 9 and 6 when I filed for divorce. 8 years into our marriage, she became the primary caregiver of her disabled brother, who was largely independent anyway. She stopped by at least once a day to make sure he was okay. But like I said, as she became more and more anxious, as she started visiting with him for longer and longer periods of time, when it came to the point that she was at his house from the moment she got done work to 11 p.m. at night, I had enough. I never agreed to act as a single parent while she practically lived at her brother's house. I drove to his house and she wasn't there. Since I didn't have any other clues, I returned home and she was there. She claimed I must have just missed her since she came back from her brother's house. She was very clingy to her purse, which made it seem like she had something important inside. When she finally went to sleep, I checked it and I couldn't believe what I found. I found a bag of drugs. This made a lot of sense, given my wife's insane energy and growing need to be away from the house. I took her phone into my shaking hands and retext between her and someone we'll call AP. I never checked my wife's phone before this because it was never a concern. The texts were very bad. She wasn't just doing drugs with him. She was having intimate with him in exchange for the drugs. Just like that, within 45 seconds, I realized I did not know who my wife was. I thought she was loyal and honest, and she wasn't. I thought she was a responsible and thoughtful mother, but she was not. Our 12-year marriage was over, and I dreaded telling our children. We tried to conceive a third child, but she only had a few miscarriages, and now I didn't know if it was due to her secret drug habit. I sat on the kitchen floor as I racked my brain for any clues she'd given me, and there were none. She was really good at hiding it from me, at least until that month. I took 2 hours to think about what I was going to do and how I'd handle this. First, I decided to call the police. I told them AP name and address from the text, and said I had proof that my wife was getting drugs from him. He was investigated and arrested within 24 hours. Before my wife woke up, I got the kids ready and took them to my mom's house. She woke up in an empty house and called me. As soon as I told her I found what was in her purse, she freaked out. She tried to say she didn't do them all the time, just when she needed to pick me up. I told her she couldn't lie to me, but she'd better use what she had slowly because her AP dealer was in jail. She was speechless. She tried to play dumb, but I told her she was wasting my time and hung up. She didn't call me back for a while, but when she did, she was devastated. Reality started sinking in, having confirmed that AP actually was in jail, and knowing I had evidence against her meant she was going to have trouble seeing her kids in the future. She showed up to my mom's house in desperation, begging me to come home with the kids so we could work through it. I told her there wasn't any hope for our marriage. I couldn't even look at her, but I did tell her I would never try to keep her from seeing our children. She pulled herself together long enough to visit with them. She didn't look good in court, and I won full custody. It was up to me when and how my wife would visit with her kids, so I made sure I was always there and she was sober. As terrible as this was, it was the best outcome that could have happened for us all after my wife's betrayal and bad habit. I got a new house for the kids, and after selling the old one. It was harder with just one income. Even though my wife was ordered to pay alimony and child support, the payments were always late. Eventually, she started working under the table and giving me what she could. But she had trouble maintaining a job. I'm glad I live with my kids and know they're safe. I've been healing and living my life almost the same as I was before. Just waiting until I feel ready to start dating again. I only want to protect our children's innocence.